Hi, this is Don. I'm continuing my previous video on the sonnets 1 through 17 from the Stratfordian viewpoint. Now, I've read in other books that the theory is that De Vere's wife, Anne, hired Shakespeare to write the sonnets to encourage. That's the Stratfordian view. Take it for what it's worth. She hired Shakespeare to write these poems of love to the Earl of Southampton to encourage him to marry her daughter. So here's the ironic aspect to that, is that if Edward de Vere wrote the poems, why would she hire her own husband to write these lyrics, whatever? Makes no sense at all. But if she's getting Shakespeare to write them, well, I have a lot of notes written here in my sonnets book over the years. There was this person named Henry Peacham who in 1622 listed Edward de Vere as one of the poets who made the Elizabethan era a golden age. He doesn't mention Shakespeare or Shakespeare. He mentions Edward de Vere, so which seems a little strange if Shakespeare was this great poet of Venus and Adonis and Lucrece and the sonnets. It seems kind of odd, but actually the first sonnet of I think there's 154 sonnets altogether. Let me double check that. 152. Let me just double check that again. Well, I guess there are 154. I was right. So Sidney Lee asserts that there are 20 dedicatory sonnets to Southampton. And these would be Sonnet 23, 26, 32, 37, 38, 69, 77 through 86, 100, 101, 103, and 106. So the first sonnet is Sonnet 23, which I'll read here. As an unperfect actor on the stage, who with his fear is put besides his part, or some fierce thing replete with too much rage, whose strength's abundance weakens his own heart, so I, for fear of trust, forget to say the perfect ceremony of love's rite, and in mine own love's strength seem to decay, overcharged with burden of mine own love's might. Oh, let my books be then the eloquence and dumb presagers of my speaking breast, who plead for love and look for recompense, more than that tongue that more hath more expressed. Oh, learn to read what silent love hath writ, to hear with eyes belongs to love's fine wit. So technically that's the first sonnet, even though it's placed as the 23rd. Now, if you look at the Bible, the 23rd Psalm, I don't know if that has any significance or not, but when you're looking at these first 17 sonnets, there's a special special relationship here between an older man and a younger man. Now, Shakespeare was born in 1564. If you look at Who's Who that I mentioned in the first video, you see that Henry, I can't pronounce his last name, it starts with a W, was born in 1573, so they're kind of close in age. The sonnets here again do not fit. They're not that far apart in age, but Edward de Vere was born in 1550, so there's a 23-year age gap between those two. That seems like the more likely situation of the fair youth sonnets. So there are many. I have notes on just about every page of the sonnet, so there's many more things that I hope to uncover here, but it does get complicated. You have to have a knowledge of de Vere's life and also Shakespeare's life to see how they, because I've read in some places that all the plays of Shakespeare were written between 1593 and 1603, which would fit in with de Vere's life because he died in 1604. But then other sources say that there were other plays that were written after de Vere died, so his authorship is in question because of that. So I haven't delved into that enough to be able to say with certainty that, also another problem is that after Shakespeare died in 1616, there were further edits to the plays by somebody, some mystery figure, which some believe was Emily Lanier Bassano. I'm probably saying that name wrong. It was probably Emilia Bassano Lanier. So there's some complications in nailing down the plays themselves, but right here I'm just focusing on the sonnets, and I wanted to clarify the comedy which I mentioned about these first 17 sonnets. What de Vere was doing was using a pseudonym, Shakespeare, but the other people around him were getting suspicious or thinking that de Vere himself was Shakespeare, that the person claiming to be Shakespeare was actually an imposter, and so they were parodying his poems, publishing poems of their own that lampooned de Vere's poems. And this was all happening right around 1593. So Shakespeare was making, de Vere was making a good living from these poems. It's not like he was doing this for, he's a noble. He's technically, what happened was de Vere had the Blackfriars Theater, I believe was the name of it. He had a company of youth that did acting. And so in a certain year, let me look at the timeline, he shut down the Blackfriars Theater in the year, this is not going to jump out at me. Well, yeah, here it is. In 1583, in the spring, De Vere leaves Blackfriars Theatre in London. That was also the time at which he had a legitimate infant son. He's readmitted to court, travels with court to Oxford University. So, what is the connection between Shakespeare and De Vere? From all my readings, the only thing I can come up with is that in Stratford, the Shakespeare family knew the Field family. Stratford is part of, yeah, now my memory's not serving me here, is a part of England. So I'm not sure how close the Fields and the Shakespeare's, who were actually, their name was actually Shake Shaft, but they changed it to Shakespeare at some point. So anyways, there was a person named Richard Field that was about the same age as William, who had a bookshop in London next to the Blackfriars Theatre. So I'm guessing that's how Shakespeare and De Vere became aware of each other. If like, Shakespeare is supposed to have gone to London at age 17. So if you do the math on that, 1564 plus 17, here again I get to do my math, that would be in 1581. So the sonnets still haven't been written at that point. But Michael Wood makes mention in his In Search of Shakespeare, the early years, that Shakespeare wrote a poem for his wife that sounds very Shakespearean. So it would follow that because Shakespeare has this gift of writing poetry, that he's the author of Shakespeare. So if there's something more to it than that, for example, Shakespeare could have written a letter to De Vere and said, I need a poem. I'm just making a... It would seem like, Shakespeare had the ability to write poetry, but whether he actually wrote the plays or the sonnets or the other works of Shakespeare, the details in the works of Shakespeare don't seem to totally line up with the circumstances of Shakespeare's life. So you have to take it from there, I guess.